ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to sprint ahead in life while others are stuck running in circles, sweating, struggling, exhausted, but going nowhere? It's not because they're lazy or lacking talent or born under some cursed star. It's because success doesn't just come from what we do, it often hides in what we stop doing. Imagine pouring water into a leaking bucket. No matter how fast you fill it, you'll never see results. That's exactly how most people chase success. Endlessly doing more, working harder, pushing longer without realizing they're bleeding progress from habits that quietly sabotage them. And here's the twist: these habits aren't just wrong, they feel right. That's the trap. We cling to them because they're comfortable, familiar, even logical. But logic doesn't build empires, courage does. So if you're ready to shake your thinking, challenge your beliefs, and maybe even laugh a little while we burn some bad habits to the ground, stick with me. Because by the time we're done, you'll know exactly what 3 things you must cut loose if you're serious about chasing not just success but significance. Stop comparing your journey to others. It sounds simple, even obvious, but this one habit quietly robs more dreams than failure ever will. Comparison is a thief, not of joy alone, but of direction, clarity, and peace. When you measure your progress against someone else's success, you distort the truth of your own story. You begin to value their timeline, their achievements, their highlights more than your own effort, growth, or potential. And the tragedy is, you don't even realize it's happening. It begins subtly. You see a peer achieve something big, a promotion, a business milestone, a viral post, and suddenly your accomplishments feel small. Your pace feels too slow. Your passion feels misguided. You start to wonder if you're behind, or worse, if you're broken. But what you're really doing is trying to run a marathon in someone else's shoes. Every person is walking a path shaped by their own values, wounds, upbringing, and timing. Some started earlier. Some had more help. Some had fewer obstacles. And some, believe it or not, are pretending they're ahead while struggling behind the scenes. What you see on the surface on social media, in conversations and casual glances, are curated glimpses. You're comparing your raw footage to someone else's highlight reel. And the more you do it, the more you lose focus on what actually matters: your growth, your mission, your values. There's nothing wrong with being inspired by others. In fact, role models are powerful. They remind us of what's possible. But there's a line between inspiration and comparison, and when you cross it, motivation turns into shame. You stop cheering others on and start feeling threatened by their wins. You hesitate to share your progress because it doesn't look flashy enough. You begin to chase visibility instead of authenticity. You start doing things to impress rather than to express. And when that happens, your journey is no longer yours. Comparison leads to impatience. You rush the process. You try to hack your way to the top. You skip foundational work, jump from idea to idea, hoping something sticks quickly. But greatness doesn't come from shortcuts, it comes from commitment. And commitment requires focus. You can't focus when you're constantly looking sideways. You can't hear your own inner voice if it's drowned out by the noise of what others are doing. And you can't build a legacy by imitating someone else's blueprint. Your power lies in originality, not imitation. Think about nature. A sunflower doesn't look at a rose and wish it had red petals. A mountain doesn't shrink just because another one is taller. They both exist fully themselves without apology or comparison. The same applies to you. Your journey may be slower, quieter, or messier, but it's no less worthy. It might take you 10 years to achieve what someone else did in 3, but those 10 years are shaping something far more powerful than the result. They're shaping you. They're building resilience, integrity, creativity, and wisdom. Traits that no algorithm, no spotlight, and no fast track can give you. When you compare yourself, you often miss how far you've come. You downplay the progress you've made because it doesn't look like someone else's destination. But you weren't meant to follow their path. You were meant to carve your own. Maybe you didn't grow up with support. Maybe you've had to unlearn toxic beliefs. Maybe your mental health has been a silent battle, and yet you're still showing up, still fighting, still growing. That matters more than any external metric. Comparison also creates unnecessary pressure. It convinces you that you should be somewhere you're not, doing something you're not meant to do, being someone you're not. And that pressure doesn't push you forward, it paralyzes you. You freeze, second-guessing every decision. You hold back your voice, your ideas, your truth because you fear they won't measure up. And the saddest part, you rob the world of the real you. The raw, imperfect, yet deeply powerful version of yourself who is capable of creating impact just by being authentic. The only person you should be comparing yourself to is the version of you from yesterday. Did you grow? Did you try? Did you learn? That's where success begins, in consistent, honest reflection, not in silent self-judgment. Let others inspire you, but let them go when their path distracts you. Use their wins as proof that success is possible, not as evidence that you're behind. Because you're not behind, you're just in progress. And that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Stop fearing failure and rejection. These two fears are some of the most powerful chains we carry, often invisible, but incredibly heavy. They quietly influence our decisions, our confidence, and our willingness to take risks. We talk ourselves out of trying because the possibility of falling flat feels worse than not trying at all. Rejection stings because it touches our deepest need to be seen, accepted, and valued. Failure terrifies us because it challenges our worth and makes us question if we're enough. And yet, what we often forget is that the fear of failure does more damage than failure itself. The fear of rejection is more limiting than rejection itself. We don't just avoid pain, we avoid potential. Most people don't fail because they aren't capable. They fail because they never begin. They sit on ideas, delay decisions, stay silent in rooms they were meant to speak in, all because they're afraid of what might go wrong. They let opportunities slip because the thought of being told no feels like a verdict rather than feedback. But the truth is, no one builds anything meaningful without facing these fears. Every innovator, leader, artist, or entrepreneur has stumbled. They've been told no, laughed at, overlooked. The difference is they kept moving. Not because they were fearless, but because they stopped letting fear decide. Fear of failure creates perfectionism. We try to get everything right before we act. We overthink, overplan, and never execute. We convince ourselves we're just being careful, but in reality, we're stuck in a loop of hesitation. And that hesitation costs us time, momentum, and sometimes our dreams. Meanwhile, others move forward not because they're more talented, but because they're more willing to be messy. They understand that clarity comes from doing, not waiting. They see every failed attempt as a step closer to success, not a step backward. Fear of rejection, on the other hand, keeps us small. We avoid asking for help, pitching our ideas, or putting our true selves out there. We water down our personality, hide our ambitions, and choose safety over sincerity. We try to fit in instead of standing out, thinking that belonging requires shrinking, but it doesn't. The people who make the deepest impact are the ones who dare to be seen, even if it means being misunderstood, disliked, or ignored at first. Rejection is not the opposite of acceptance, it's the path to it. Because the more you face rejection, the closer you get to the people, opportunities, and places that truly align with who you are. Failure is not a dead end, it's data. It teaches you what doesn't work, what you need to adjust, and how much strength you actually have. It builds humility and resilience, two things success can never teach you. Rejection is not a reflection of your value, it's a redirection. Sometimes it protects you from settling for less than you're worth. Sometimes it pushes you towards something better. But you only realize this in hindsight. In the moment, it hurts. That's okay. Growth often does. We all want to be liked. We all want our work to be applauded and our dreams to be validated. But if that desire becomes a need, it will crush your voice and your vision. You'll spend your life editing yourself to fit someone else's mold. And no matter how perfect you try to be, someone will still criticize you. So stop waiting for universal approval. It's a myth. Even the greatest minds in history had haters. What they didn't have was hesitation. They believed in what they were building, even when no one else did. You don't grow from hiding. You grow from exposure, from trying and failing, from showing up and hearing no, from being vulnerable enough to risk embarrassment. Confidence isn't built in comfort zones, it's built in rejection zones. Every time you hear no and don't quit, you get stronger. Every time you fail and try again, your belief grows. You stop tying your identity to outcomes and start tying it to effort. That's when everything changes. Because when failure and rejection no longer scare you, you become unstoppable. You stop chasing approval and start chasing purpose. You stop fearing loss and start trusting the process, and that's when success starts chasing you. Stop procrastinating on uncomfortable actions. These are the very actions that often hold the key to the transformation you're craving, yet they're the ones you avoid the most. You tell yourself you'll do it later when you're more ready, more confident, more prepared. But later turns into days, then weeks, then sometimes years, and all the while, the thing you're avoiding is quietly becoming the wall between you and the life you want. It's not the hard work that holds people back, it's the discomfort. the conversation that feels awkward, the risk that feels scary, the decision that feels uncertain. So instead of facing it, you find ways to stay busy with the easy, the familiar, the low stakes. You make to-do lists, clean your inbox, tweak small details, convince yourself you're being productive. But deep down, you know you're running from something more important. The truth is, the uncomfortable action is usually the most necessary one. It's the phone call that could change everything. The pitch you've been afraid to make, the application you haven't submitted, the habit you need to break, or the boundary you need to set. And the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. You start to feel guilt not just for what you're not doing, but for betraying your own potential. That guilt turns into anxiety. That anxiety fuels more procrastination. And before you know it, you're stuck in a loop knowing what to do, but never doing it. What makes these actions so hard isn't just the discomfort, it's what we attach to them. We tell ourselves stories. What if I fail? What if they laugh at me? What if I'm not good enough? These stories feel real, so we retreat. But discomfort doesn't mean danger. It means growth. It means you're stepping into unfamiliar territory, stretching your limits, becoming someone stronger. Waiting for fear to disappear before you act is like waiting for a storm to pass. While standing still in the rain, you just end up soaked and cold. Action is what clears the storm. When you avoid discomfort, you also avoid responsibility. You hand over control to your feelings, letting them decide what gets done and what gets delayed. But feelings are temporary. Discipline isn't. If you only act when you feel like it, you'll rarely move forward. Growth requires doing the hard thing even when it's inconvenient, even when it's scary, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. That's where real progress is made, in the quiet, lonely moments where you choose courage over comfort. You can have excuses or you can have results. Not both. And most excuses sound logical. I don't have time. I'm not ready. It's not the right moment. But underneath these excuses is usually one truth. It's uncomfortable. And you're human, so you naturally avoid pain. But comfort zones don't keep you safe. They keep you stuck. They keep you from applying for that job, launching that business, speaking your truth, or making that change. You wait for motivation, but motivation is a visitor. It doesn't live with you. You have to act first. Motivation often follows action, not the other way around. Think of how many breakthroughs are sitting behind uncomfortable actions you've been avoiding. How many opportunities are waiting just beyond that first step. How many problems could be solved if you face them head-on instead of wishing them away. It's never the big leap that changes your life. It's the small decision to stop delaying what you know matters. That one email, that one call, that one uncomfortable move could shift everything. But you have to stop overthinking and start executing. Overthinking is fear in disguise. It convinces you that planning more is better than doing more. But planning without action is just disguised avoidance. The irony is, the longer you avoid the uncomfortable, the more power it gains. It becomes this looming shadow in your mind, growing more intimidating every day. But when you finally take action, even a small one, the fear begins to shrink. You realize it wasn't as bad as you imagined. You realize you're stronger than you gave yourself credit for. And you build momentum. Momentum is a powerful force. It makes the next action easier, and the one after that easier still. But you only get momentum by moving. You don't wait for confidence, you create it. Confidence is a reward for showing up when it's hard, not when it's easy. Every time you delay an uncomfortable action, you're not just delaying results, you're delaying growth. You're postponing the version of you who's on the other side of that discomfort. The version who's more capable, more fearless, more fulfilled. That version isn't waiting in some distant future. They're waiting on the other side of the action you've been avoiding. Stop saying yes to everything and everyone. It may feel kind, noble, even necessary, but it comes at a cost far greater than we often realize. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your goals, your values, or your boundaries, you're saying no to something that does. Your time, energy, and focus are limited resources, and when you give them away freely to please others or avoid conflict, you drain yourself of the very fuel you need to build the life you truly want. The desire to be liked, to be helpful, to avoid disappointment, it can slowly turn you into someone who lives by other people's expectations instead of your own intentions. And the worst part is, people start to believe that your constant availability is who you are, not just something you're offering temporarily. When you make yourself too available, you become overwhelmed, resentful, and disconnected from your own priorities. You begin to lose sight of what actually matters to you because you're too busy managing everyone else's needs. You stretch yourself thin trying to be everything for everyone, and in the process you become almost nothing to yourself. It's a silent kind of self-abandonment, one that looks generous on the outside, but often hides deep exhaustion and internal chaos. You agree to attend events you don't care about, take on tasks that drain you, answer messages at times you should be resting, and say yes when your body is screaming for a pause. You wear your busyness like a badge of honor, hoping it earns you approval, but all it really earns you is burnout. Saying yes out of guilt or fear is not generosity, it's a trade. It's a trade of your authenticity for temporary peace. You avoid saying no because you fear being judged, misunderstood, or seen as selfish. But the truth is, saying no is an act of self-respect, not self-centeredness. When you protect your energy, your boundaries, your time, you actually show up more powerfully and meaningfully for the things and people that truly matter. You're not here to please everyone. You're not a human buffer to smooth over discomfort. You're a person with a purpose, and that purpose requires clarity and intention, not constant compromise. People may not always like your no. They might push back, express disappointment, or even withdraw. And that's okay, because their reaction is not your responsibility, your alignment is. The right people will respect your boundaries. The right opportunities won't require you to sacrifice your sanity, and the right path won't ask you to betray your own needs just to stay on it. Every yes you give should be a conscious, wholehearted decision, not a reflex born from fear or habit. Because when you say yes without meaning it, everyone loses. You lose your peace. They lose your authenticity. And the outcome loses its quality. You can't create anything meaningful without focus, and focus demands saying no to distractions, many of which come disguised as good intentions or harmless favors. You don't owe everyone access to your time. You don't have to explain or justify every no. You are allowed to say, "That doesn't work for me," without guilt. You are allowed to rest without apologizing. You are allowed to protect your space even when others don't understand it. Because your well-being is not up for debate. It's not something you earn after proving your worth through endless acts of self-sacrifice. It's something you claim by honoring yourself daily. It takes courage to start saying no, especially if you've spent years conditioning yourself to be agreeable, cooperative, and low maintenance. But people-pleasing isn't kindness, it's fear in disguise. It's the fear of rejection, of not being needed, of being seen as difficult or rude. But what's truly difficult is living a life where your needs are always at the bottom of the list, where your schedule is packed with obligations that light no fire in your heart, where your calendar is full but your soul is empty. That's not generosity. That's surrendering your voice for comfort that doesn't last. When you say no, you create space. Space for creativity, for rest, for relationships that nourish rather than drain. You start doing things with more presence because you're not spread so thin. You begin to trust yourself more deeply because you're making decisions from a place of integrity rather than insecurity. And slowly the world begins to reflect that change. People start to value your time more. They respect your honesty. They see your no as strength, not rejection. But it starts with you choosing to prioritize your truth over temporary approval. You were not meant to live as a yes machine spinning through life trying to keep everyone happy. You were meant to live on purpose, guided by values that matter to you. The uncomfortable truth is that not everyone will like that version of you, and that's okay. Because the people who are meant for your life won't just tolerate your no, they'll honor it. And when you stop saying yes to everything and everyone, you start saying yes to the life you were actually meant to live.